Hey, I'm Warren Sprouse. You're on the Bible Forum. It is October 29th, which means we are on the cusp of Halloween. Halloween's going to be in just 2 days from now. I wanted to share an article that I ran across. It's kind of a lead into a broader discussion later on. This is from a website called prophecynewswatch.com, and it was taken from another website. Some of you know Dr. Brown. I can't remember his first name now. He's a charismatic, does a lot of stuff, but he's got a website called askdrbrown.org. And he says, we live in a society where spirituality may have nothing whatever to do with God or with Christianity. A society where astrology and witchcraft are more popular than ice cream, especially among millennials, which are people born after 1980. One study has even shown that over half of young adults in the U.S. believe astrology is a science. Melissa Jane, the owner of Catland, a metaphysical boutique in Brooklyn, New York, said she has been interested in this type of spirituality increase recently, particularly among millennials. She said to cater to this uptick in interest, Catland now offers classes such as Witchcraft 101, Astrology 101, and Spirit Seance. They're all sciences. No. Whether it be casting spells, tarot, astrology, meditation, and trance, or herbalism, she says, these traditions offer tangible ways for people to enact change in their lives. She goes on to say, for a generation that grew up in a world of big industry, environmental destruction, large and oppressive governments, toxic social structures, all of which seem too big to change, this can be incredibly attractive, meaning it's all our fault. For millennials, in meeting someone new, the first question isn't where do you live, what do you do, but what's your sign? Many millennials view horoscopes as a good reference point to identify and place people in the world. They read them, they believe in them, they're in there every day. At the same time, interest in religion is in decline, especially among millennials. You see a correlation? Now, according to a recent Pew Research Center study, the majority of Americans believe it's not necessary to believe in God in order to have good morals. I can be a good person and I don't even have to believe there is a God. The percentage of people between the ages of 18 and 29 who, quote, never doubt the existence of God, end of quote, fell from 81% in 07 to 67% in 2012. At the same time, more than half of young adults in the United States believe astrology to be a science. It is not. And the psychic services industry, which includes astrology, but also aura reading, mediumship, tarot card reading, palmistry, and a lot of other metaphysical stuff, this industry is growing. Between 2011 and 2016, it increased by 2%. It is now worth $2 billion with a B dollars annually, and that's according to MarketWatch.com. Well, here's the question. Since a majority of Americans believe it's not necessary to believe in God to have good morals, what is the basis for your moral code? This week alone, I have articles on homosexuality, transsexuality, a mother who sought to kill her daughter's school teacher for taking a cell phone away from her, a graphic sex being presented to 12-year-olds in school, not to mention our political leaders and the pure evil they seem to engage in simply in the name of politics. We have lost track of the number of counterintuitive and countercultural issues and policies otherwise smart people do and have done in the name of expediency and power. In another generation, there was an English writer, poet, philosopher by the name of G.K. Chesterton. He died in 1936. He said, when people stop believing in God, they don't simply believe in nothing. They begin to believe in anything. They stop believing in the eternal absolute and open themselves up to almost anything that might be out there. Does that sound familiar? As I just pointed out, young people are not simply ditching spiritual beliefs, they're ditching belief in God for belief in witchcraft and astrology. We call it secularization. All things secular is another way to say all things worldly or temporal. And to say that is to say all things ungodly. It is the devil who is the prince of this world. As I've already pointed out, more than half of young adults in the United States believe astrology to be a science. Compare that to the Chinese. Less than 8% of the Chinese believe in astrology. What this means is that a sizable number of young adult Americans have abandoned belief in a creator spirit in favor of all kinds of spirits. MarketWatch.com cites Melissa Jane, owner of the Brooklyn-based metaphysical boutique called Catland. Jane says, quote, she's seen a major uptick in interest in the occult in the past 5 years, especially among New Yorkers in their 20s. Her store offers workshops in Witchcraft 101, Astrology 101, and Spirit Seance. All of this is in keeping with the findings of historian and anthropologist Rodney Stark. You ever hear of Rodney Stark? I never did. Stark points out that more than 20% of Swedes say they believe in reincarnation. Half believe in mental telepathy, and nearly 1 in 5, 20%, believe in the power of Lucky Charms, not the candy. A third believe in New Age medicine, such as healing crystals. 20% would consider purchasing their personal horoscope. 10% would consult a medium, and nearly 20% believe in ghosts. Iceland is not far away from these people. And yet 0% of Icelanders 25 years of age or younger believe in God. They don't believe that God created the world. Having abandoned belief in the Creator Spirit, they also believe in all kinds of spirits. In Iceland, highways are sometimes rerouted so as not to disturb the various hills and large rocks where the Huldufolk may dwell. Huldufolk are spirits imagined. In some cases, Icelanders planning to build a new house often hire elf spotters to ensure that their site does not encroach on the Huldufolk. Okay. Huldufolk apparently don't like churches, they don't like crosses, and they don't like electricity. Don't know why the electricity. Half of all Icelanders have visited a fortune teller, and spiritualism is very widely practiced, popular even among intellectuals and academics. According to a Reuters dispatch in February of 2015, a rapidly growing group of Icelandic neo-pagans broke ground for a temple dedicated to the worship of the Old Norse gods. The same holds true in Russia, where atheism has dominated for decades and the organized church has suffered tremendous persecution. A Russian news account stated the Russian newspapers are full of ads for all manner of urban witches and wizards. So what's the point? Well, the point is that without an objective, eternal, unchanging standard of morality, human beings tend to create their own. And what they create is entirely self-related, meaning that it's what they believe, what they can create. And since there is a fear that's in them about, I don't know how else to say it, the devil, they gravitate that way and create all sorts of things. Some cases to mollify the devil, in other cases to worship him, some cases to avoid, whatever possibility. What they believe influences their value system, and history demonstrates that without an objective standard in anything, the society, the individual and the society are going to move away from objective standards of right, wrong, good, bad, and so forth. And they're going to gravitate toward the subjective, witches, spirits, elves, omens, and all the rest of it. Throw God and the Bible out and bring in this other stuff. That's natural. On the other side, studies show that turning back to God in word and in deed, in spirit and in truth, will produce a return to morality. This is in keeping with biblical teaching and biblical history. It might be your testimony. Israel turned away from the one true God to follow idols. The message in societies, as long as they've been on the planet, is that we worship something. And if we're not worshiping the one true God of heaven, we're creating another God to worship, or we're worshiping idols, or we're worshiping ourselves. But when they returned, Israel, exchanging worship of self, the creation or the other spirits, to the one true God, their morality also changed. Today, MarketWatch.com reports on a Pew Research Center study indicating the majority of Americans now believe it's not necessary to believe in God to have good morals. So there's the bad news. The good news is that in turning back to God in word and deed and spirit and truth will produce a return to good morals. There's also a silver lining to the whole thing. Most people know that there is more to this world than the material. They're just bored with traditional religion. If they could be introduced to the living God, their lives would be changed. But the living God is not alive in most churches today, nor is he alive in most people who call themselves Christians. We are still acting out as though we are a Christian nation. But there are fewer and fewer and fewer of the real kind. And it's showing up everywhere. Is it showing up that way in your home?